Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming to join us here tonight for the Graham County Republican Committee hosting the CD6 Congressional Forum. We're pleased that all 5 ballot qualified candidates have been here, or are here tonight, that they've traveled out of their way to be here. We're looking forward to hearing from all of them. They've all agreed to stay afterwards in the lobby area and meet with you individually and in small groups to follow up on what they're going to talk about in the formal forum tonight. So we encourage you to think of your questions you want to ask them and stick around and visit. We'd like to begin this evening with an invocation. We've invited Justin Layton to do that for us. If you'd come up, Justin.
Our Father in heaven, as we come before Thee this evening, we pause to express gratitude for the blessing that it is to be able to meet here. We are grateful for the blessings which we enjoy here in our community, in our county. We are grateful for our freedoms, for those that have fought for our freedoms and that continue to fight for our freedoms. We ask Thy blessings upon them. We pray this evening that we would be able to take to heart those things that are shared, that we would be blessed with good judgment. We ask a blessing upon those leaders of our country, our state, and our community, that they would also be blessed with insight and knowledge as they are faced with difficult decisions. We are grateful for the inspiration that we receive, and we pray that Thou would continue to give us that inspiration. We are grateful for moisture that has fallen in this area. We recognize Thy hand in these things, and we ask that if it be Thy will, that we would continue to receive moisture sufficient for our needs, that we might sustain life and beautify life here. Again, we're grateful for all of our blessings. We pray for safety as we depart later this evening, and this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much. And if you'd all please stand, we have invited the Honorary Mayor of Sanchez, Bill Brandow, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. It's an honor.
We've got several dignitaries and elected officials who are in the audience tonight. We appreciate you coming. Frankly, there's probably more than we can introduce. There are 3 members of the legislature who have come tonight. I would like to point them out. Representative Shauna Bullock is here. She's also running for the Secretary of State. Please welcome her. The other 2 you probably know very well. They're our own representatives from what's currently LD 14, soon to be 19, because they're here all the time. We think, at least Representative Griffin, we think we can count her as a resident here now for sales tax distribution, and we're thinking Representative Diaz is just behind. So please welcome Representative Gail Griffin and Representative Lupe Diaz. As you can imagine, this has been an enormous amount of effort and work that has gone on here. And so at this time, we're inviting our county chairman, Kip Kimpton, to come up and give us a few words. Kip.
It's always good to have Keith Alexander because he's clearly the brains of this operation. He's good to have around, good to talk to. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. It shows a great deal, shows that each and every one of you have a great deal of interest in not only the United States, but also this county. This county, I've been here for 20 plus years. My parents both grew up here. I was born in Morenci, Arizona, a hospital that's not there anymore. And I've come to love this place, and this is my home. And when I see each and every one of you show up, I see people that have a genuine interest in our home. We have 5 people here on the stage tonight, and they are looking to be employed, and they are looking for you to employ them. And we need to listen to what they say. We need to understand why they're here, and we need to see which one of them will come back and visit us again and help us protect what is important to each and every one of us. I'd like to take a minute to thank Eastern Arizona College. They've been great to work with. What a great facility, what a wonderful pillar of our community. I know Keith has been employed here for years, and we're so fortunate to have this college that now actually offers a 4-year university degree to anyone that wants to get it, and we're fortunate. I'd like to thank security. I think Lance Lyons, every time I come out here, he's out working and making sure everybody's safe. PJ, he's not officially on security detail today, but he's been here forever, and we love him. Great job. I think Herman Andrews is out there, world-class wrestler, so don't mess with him. Audio, visual, we've got Chris Murphy back there, Rick Woods, always good to work with. They've been responding and making sure that we could stream this event. I'm going to end this quick. We're here to protect Graham County. We're here to protect Arizona. We're here to protect the First Amendment. We're here to protect the Second Amendment. We're here to protect the United States and the stuff that comes down the line right now. We're here to protect our kids, our children. And we want to make dang sure our family is there and nobody comes in and changes anything about our children. That's our call as our parents. And now's the time to fight. Now's the time to stand up for what you believe in and not back down. I'd like to thank the moderators. John, great job. He's looked out for this county. Jennifer Griffith, man, she's a fireball. She's been fun to work with. She does things, and I go, holy cow, man, I wish I could think that clearly. She's wonderful to work with. I think it'd be a failure not to mention Gary. Why don't you stand up, Gary? Gary Griffith. This man has been a judge. I don't know, are you officially not a judge in the county right now, or are you Greenlee, or what's that? December. He's been here in this valley, supporting this valley, this county for, man, as long as I can remember. And we are so fortunate to have a family with this level of talent. I'm going to end it there. Thank you again for coming. Let's see who we want working for us, and let's make sure they look out for Graham County. You guys rock. Thank you.
In the interest of time, we're not going to go through all the introductions of the candidates. You've got programs there. If you haven't picked one up, they're by the door. It has their bios that you can read and take home with you. Also, the biographies of our two moderators, which is, as Kip said, we're very fortunate to have here. I'll go through a little bit of the procedures for you here. We would ask that you maintain a polite dignity here tonight and be adults and be friendly. Clap, cheer as you want. If anybody gets out of hand, sorry to say, we're going to ask you to leave, and we're going to ask that rather forcefully. Officer Lyons, Sheriff Allred, you got those tasers charged up on full there, and
No.
not just phase. All right, good job. And part of that, besides just being nice people like we are in Graham County, is, as you know, Chris and his crew are live streaming this tonight, and they pick up these other noises. So we want to be respectful for all those people that are at home or in their offices watching this tonight. If you do need to leave for some reason, please go out the main door here, not the side doors. We don't want alarms setting off. We'll appreciate that very much. Tell you what we've told the candidates a little bit so you know. They are seated up here based on straws that were drawn. It was completely random. Questions are going to be asked in order. Whoever starts the question, the next person will start question 2, the next person will start question 3. At the end, there will be an opportunity for them to I guess you could call it open mic, but to give their stump speech for about 3 minutes as well. If the timekeeper is down here, just so you know, we do have a timekeeper. They'll make some kind of a signal if the candidates go too long. We want you to help them if they don't see it. There's a word that you say if the sign goes up and they keep talking, and it is Boo. That you would not believe how effective that is with the candidate. They just instantly stop, and so that will keep them in there okay. But I don't think we'll hear any boos tonight. With that, I'm going to turn over the time to Mrs. Griffith and Supervisor Howard. Thank you very much.
All right, candidates, we are going to start with something unusual. It's going to be a group question. You'll all get to answer at the same time by holding up a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If you are, and we wanted to ask some questions that are always on everybody's minds, like, and the first one is about abortion. If you are pro-choice, please hold your thumb up. If you are if you are pro-life, please hold your thumb up. If you are pro-choice, hold your thumb down. If it's complicated, this way. So ready, go. All right. Oh, we got two thumbs over here. Okay, great. Thank you. Our second question is on Second Amendment rights. If you believe that in the Second Amendment's right to bear arms, please hold a thumbs up. All right. Great. Thank you. And our third question, we would think that this would just be self-evident, but it has not been so in recent days. And so I'm going to ask you, do you commit to uphold the principles and laws of the U.S. Constitution? If so, thumbs up. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Our first question will have to do with inflation, and we'll begin with number one, Lucretia. Everyone is feeling the sting of inflation, Bidenflation, I guess you could call it, with the possibility of exception of him. He never has to fill up his own gas tank. But what do you think ought to be done to alleviate inflation immediately, and would you be in favor of a federal tax holiday?
Gas tax.
Gas tax holiday, excuse me.
Sorry.
I knew what you meant. So there are three things that we can do immediately. Number one, turn the House red. Number two, turn the Senate red. Number three, have a Republican president in 2024. Having said that, things just don't seem normal, do they? We go to do something as mundane as going to the grocery store, and we experience inflation that's higher than it's ever been in 40 years at 8.6% and growing. We have our supply chain is all jacked up. We have rationed baby formula. These are things that have not happened in our history of our country. And then further, we go to the gas station to fill up our gas tanks, and we find that gas is approaching $5 a gallon or even over $5 a gallon in some places. We're each spending an average of $200 more a month on gas than we were a year ago. This is a shame. It's crushing all of us, particularly our hardworking families and those that are on a fixed income. So the thing that I did when I went out and got my signatures for this office is I went out and I spoke with people directly. I didn't want there to be a filter. So I wanted to hear directly from them what was on their mind. And inflation, without a doubt, was the number one issue. Why? Because it's a front-facing issue. It's something that we can't escape. We're all at some point going to get gas for our vehicles, and we're all at some point going to need to get food someplace. Has anybody been to like a fast food place? The cost of fast food almost rivals what it would be in a sit-down restaurant. So what the message that we need to send to Washington is that we don't accept Biden saying that it's Putin's price increase. He says that it's the oil companies that are being greedy and it's their price increase. The other day I heard him say that it's actually the small business owners of the actual gas stations. Reject. Thank you.
Mrs. Wynn, 2 minutes.
Well, if you believe that Joe Biden's fairy tale, that Russia is the cause of our inflation, or ultra-MAGA people like myself, and probably most of the people in this audience, or the oil companies themselves, then obviously we have a serious problem, because this president is completely out of touch with the American people. And the hardest hit are those families who have to make a decision right now between putting food on their table or fuel in their tank. This district has been particularly hard hit because I know in traveling this district, I've gone 18,000 miles in the last 3 months, and I wish it was $200 more a month. It is more like almost $1,000 more a month in driving around the district. We have to stop printing money. There are 2 ways to bring down inflation in this country. What they don't tell you, what the president isn't telling you, is that this isn't a hidden tax. So our dollars are worth less because the government is printing so much money. And Washington needs to stop spending like they're a drunken sailor on leave. Our government is bloated. We are spending and giving money away to foreign countries. We are not protecting our own. We are not helping our citizens. And we are taking care of others that are coming into our country before we're taking care of those people in our own district. So I would tell you that the quickest thing that we can do is send Republicans to Congress, cut the spending, stop the bloat, shrink the size of government. And I will conclude with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Siscomani, 2 minutes.
Thank you. The first thing that we have to do to attack this inflation is obviously stop the spending, the overspending from Washington, D.C. They seem to be addicted to it, and they feel like the way to get out of a recession is to continue to spend. It's like trying to get out of a hole when you keep digging in it, and that's exactly what they're doing. The other thing, and it's part of the spending as well, for so long, almost 2 years now, they've been paying people to not work. This is really causing a stress on our small businesses and also in our supply chain, that it's part of the reason why inflation is up so high. And when we look at the rates of where inflation is and who it's impacting pretty much everyone. If you are a young family raising young kids, I have 6 kids of my own, oldest is 13, youngest is 3. It impacts you quite a bit. If you are someone on a fixed income after retirement, it's definitely impacting those people as well. If you look at the rate of things, gas going up 107%, meat going up about over 20%. I always ask people, what else I'm tracking as a dad of 6? Kids' shoes, okay? They're up 12%, in case you're all wondering. But these are all the things that impact all of us. And we have to really get that under control. And the only way to be able to stop the overspending coming out of Washington is to take back the House of Representatives. And that's what we're going to do in November when we win this seat back. We have to win this seat. There's no option for that. Now, I also want to address the question about the holiday tax. Listen, I am all for lowering any tax at any time and taxing people less. We need less government and less regulation and less taxing at any point of the way. And this is, the problem is that this is Joe Biden, another one of his failed, short-sighted, Band-Aid approaches with no long-term viability to it. He's trying to just cover the sun up with just one hand and not be able to continue and really phase this issue like what he's caused. So we need a long-term solution, and what I explained at the beginning is what it is. So I'm all for lowering any tax at any time. However, Joe Biden's approach is a failed, short-sighted approach.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayberry?
Technical difficulties.
Anybody want to do a little soft shoe?
Mr. Mayberry, 2 minutes, please.
Okay. The question was, how do we improve the gas, or rather the inflation situation immediately? Well, when you realize that just over 2 years ago, we were energy independent, inflation was not there like it is today, What we need to do is look at what the situation was when Mr. Biden came into the office. And what he did immediately was turn off the XL pipeline, stop exploring and drilling, and those types of things have increased the cost of fuel. Well, the cost of fuel has an effect on basically everything else. The transportation to get our food to our grocery stores is increased. Everything increases because the supply is low and the demand is where it was at the time when we were energy independent. Now let me talk a little bit about now the gas tax holiday. That is possibly one of the most ridiculous things that I can imagine. It's like feeding your children candy when they're hungry and not expecting that that's going to have an effect on their overall health. Because the gas tax holiday is basically, all right, we're going to decrease the gas price by 18.4 cents per gallon. That's what the federal gas tax is. And then we're not going to pay that 18.4 cents. But what is that 18.4 cents for? It goes into the Transportation Trust Fund to keep our roads up. So when the gas tax holiday goes away, we're several steps back. The gas prices would go back up. The roads don't have the money to be able to be repaired, and we're worse off than what we started. Mr. Biden is no good for America.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin, go ahead. 2 minutes.
The first thing that we could do is stop spending in Washington. For too long, Republicans and Democrats have been spending our money like it's theirs. They've been overspending our money. We're over $30 trillion in debt. And over 40% of the money that's ever been printed in this country has been printed in the last 18 months. So what we could do is adopt Senator Rand Paul's 5-cent cut to all programs across the board except to Social Security, and we could balance the budget and tighten the belt and put the restraints on Washington by introducing and passing a balanced budget amendment and control the spending in Washington, because you know very well when you're in your home running your family's lives, you can't go $30 trillion in debt or even some small fraction of that. Once you get to a certain point, the government or your landlord or the bank or whoever it is cuts you off. Well, who's going to cut off Washington? It's time to cut off Washington, folks. For too long, people on both sides of the aisle have been promising us the world and spending our money and selling our children and grandchildren's future down the river. Now, it started just recently with Bush. There were companies and banks and corporations that were too big to fail. The bailouts. Well, we have to bail them out, because what happens if they fail? Then, we go to Obama and his infrastructure package. It didn't get spent on building anything. Our roads are still in terrible conditions. Our bridges are still in terrible condition. And now we have Biden. Biden doesn't even know that he's in the White House. They even built a stage for him in Delaware to think that he is in the White House, and they give him an ice cream cone to assure him that he's okay. Listen, we have to stop spending, folks. We can do this. Now, as far as the gas tax, I would like to cut all taxes. Let's get rid of taxes. Let's return these issues to the state. Let's let our local representatives take care of the issue, because we see what happens with irresponsible government in D.C. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next question, 1 minute each. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about committees in the House of Representatives. When you go to the House of Representatives, most of the work that happens in the House doesn't happen on the floor of the House. It almost all happens within committees. So it matters very much which committee you will be assigned to. And you may not get to get your pick, because it depends on what leadership allows you to do. But what committee would you seek to be on? And that's going to be my question, but we're really hoping that you'll want to be on a committee that can really help Graham County. So, all right, we'll start with Mrs. Wynn. 1 minute.
Yeah, please.
Sorry.
I can't talk
1
to you for an
minute.
hour about the committee, so
1 minute or less.
an hour or less, I'll do a minute.
Yes, okay.
So this district, and you said you threw in Graham County, but I thought about this ahead of time, was armed services. We have 2 military bases. you have Fort Huachuca not too far away from here, and then Davis-Monthan. And I think that military and having a strong military and having our input in that is very important. The other one that I said that I wanted to be on was Homeland Security. Our border is in critical condition, and we need to have a voice as to what happens to our border and how we're protecting our citizens. And then if I get a third choice, I'd like to be on natural resources. They control the Department of Energy, and somebody needs to control the Department of Energy. And because we really need to look at the resources, our water, I think we're gonna have a question on that later. Water and rocks is what they deal with, and we need to have an input into the resources and how they affect our state. So those would be my three choices. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Siscomani, 1 minute.
Sure. First, it's important to note how the committees work. And there are different tiers of committees in Washington. And some committees, you can serve in one. And if it's another tier of committees, you can serve in two committees. So in Tier 1 committee, one of the ones that really attract me is appropriations. The other ones on there are Ways and Means and Energy and Commerce as well. But appropriations would be my top choice. And if you're serving that committee, you can only serve in one. This is the committee that obviously is in charge of making sure that our hard-earned money makes its way back into the state for road projects or whatever else. All committees have to look at this committee for the right appropriations. And then if I get on some of the Tier 2 committees, if I'm not into appropriations, then obviously Armed Services for the reasons of military, also Homeland Security for border security, and also the Ag Committee. One of these three industries really, with all three combined, really encompass the driving economic forces of our region. The military bases, Homeland Security, and also Ag. So I will be very happy with one of those committees.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayberry, 1 minute.
Yes, the committees that I would be interested in serving on would be the Agriculture Committee and the Armed Services Committee initially. Why the agriculture? I'm a 25-year Arizona farmer. I understand agriculture. Not only have I farmed personally, but I have a degree in agriculture, and I taught agricultural sciences, FFA, at high school in St. David. The other is the Armed Services Committee, because I'm a 28-year Air Force veteran. I know what it is to serve in the Air Force, and I know the kinds of things that we would need to be able to keep our country safe by way of having a good armed forces, all of the various services. And then, as Juan indicated, the Appropriations Committee would be one I would like to serve on, but as a freshman, that would be unlikely, but it still would be one that I would like to serve on because of its importance. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
So this is a good question because there's so many important issues facing our nation. But I have to say, look, I worked on Fort Huachuca for over a decade. So naturally, Armed Services Committee would be the one that we have because we do have Fort Huachuca and Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. But being from Cochise County, I know that the #1 economic driver in the county is ag. I grew up cutting and hanging tobacco in Indiana, so I know what a hard day's work is like. Growing plants or growing cattle, whatever you want to do, it takes people supporting you. I mean, it really takes people watching out for you because you see what the Bureau of Land Management does when they try to grab your water. But I say as an interrogator, as a reformed interrogator, that the Oversight Committee may be the perfect place for you to put me. Because the Oversight Committee, I can make sure that all those people in Washington are doing what they're supposed to do when they handle your liberties and your rights and your freedoms. So those are the committees that I would like to be on. But whatever committee I'm on, I will always work hard for you and make sure that we are looking out for you in Washington, D.C. as your representative.
Thank you. Mrs. Free?
So my approach would be to seek committee assignments that are actually achievable for a freshman congressperson. So I would be interested in, I had the pleasure of meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, and also was able to meet with the head of what used to be called JTED, which is now called the CTED program. And so there are so many small businesses that are here, people that are operating businesses out of their garage or out of their home. And so I definitely would want to be on the Small Business Committee. I also am interested in making sure that rural counties in Congressional District 2 have their share of the infrastructure dollars that are going through. And then also, I think that the way that we treat our veterans as a country is shameful, and I definitely want to support our veterans. I would want to be on the Veteran Affairs.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to have a question now on water, which is very near and dear to my heart as my farming background. This is one of the most critical issues we have here in Graham County, and it's been an ongoing issue for decades. Our farmers and our citizens, we have been litigating and fighting for decades to save and allocate our water to the proper ways and our water rights and our water decrees. But what happens is that we sometimes get forgotten when our representatives get back to Washington. They promise to help us. This is a federal issue, not a state issue. It's a federal issue, and we need your help greatly to fight this. We have spent millions and millions of dollars in litigation on this. For instance, this year, our district will spend almost $5 million. What would you do to actually help us? We've had this problem solved several times, or solvable. We could if we could just get our voices heard. What would you do to help us to fight this fight? Mr. Siscomani, please.
Yes.
2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, this is, like you mentioned, definitely an area where I think, and I'm pretty sure that this community has not been properly represented by the federal delegates in this region for far too long. It's an issue that's been complicated, an issue that has been divisive, and an issue that hits right at home for everyone here. And when you look at the biggest natural resource issue that you can talk about in Arizona, water is the #1 issue on that, wherever you go. And depending on the community that you're in, the interest of that issue is what's really at hand. And that is understanding that alone, I think, and being able to access your representative with these issues is exactly what I would offer. Now, this is a very complicated issue. And as much as I'm going to sit here and say, you know, we need to make sure that this community is taken care of and that you have the proper representation in Congress fighting for the water rights of this community and what's needed for it to prosper, I also want to be careful of not overcommitting on an issue that, as you mentioned, has been going on for decades and decades, that attorneys and major corporations and everyone has been at battle on this, and with the solvable solution at hand several times, but just something not being able to close that. What I can bring to the table is the ability and the opportunity to listen, to learn about this issue, and to actually fight for the right solutions coming from you all, because you're living it every single day. So I've been here repetitive times. I'm understanding the needs of this community more and more every time, knowing that water is the top priority for the survival of the economic industry, not to mention, obviously, our way of life. So this is something that I would highly commit to you all, to be here, to be present, to listen, and to fight for what's rightfully part of this community and what's needed to not only survive but thrive in the way that this community can with our water rights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayberry? Go ahead.
Yes, the Arizona Farm Bureau notes that $23.3 billion worth of contribution comes from agriculture, and agriculture supports 138,000 jobs for the state of Arizona. Water, of course, is the precious resource that allows that to happen, and without water, that can't happen. So we need to protect, and I will do my part in the role of a congressman to protect that water right. Now, it's imperative that Graham County farmers and residents retain their existing water rights at least. All right, I am part of this process actually myself. I experienced it in St. David and Cochise County, and I also have family members who have built up this area. For example, my great-great-grandmother is buried in the Safford Cemetery. So we have been part of the development of this situation here. My great-great-grandfather, Joseph McRae, was sent down here by Brigham Young to build up the waste places of Arizona, and that they did. Look at what we have here. This place has bloomed like a rose. Now, I think it would be terrible to think that what has been done here by our forebears would go away because the people in the great state of Maricopa, for example, think that they can go ahead and invite people to come in, and people do come in and build houses and that type of stuff at the expense of our water here in this valley. That type of thing has to end. I think the priority needs to be given to the people who settle these areas, and if there's water left over, then the people who are coming in as newcomers need to then stand in line in second place. I'd like to touch on real quick the issue of hot ground and decreed ground. It seems to me a very simple solution that the hot grounds be moved to the sides or the ends of the field so that the decreed grounds can receive the water that they need. I'm out of time. I might take a little bit of time to address that a little bit further.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin, go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and overcommit to you right now that when I'm your representative in Washington, D.C., I will fight for your water rights. And I know that right now we have an overreaching government. I've seen it. I worked in the command group on Fort Huachuca. We kept the federal government from reaching our water because if the Bureau of Land Management is #1 on the list, everyone else gets moved down and they control the water. And there's a lot of things that we have to address there. There's a lot of other similar situations. And we also have to stop the 501c3s and all these different Democrat arms suing our counties and our different areas here. But listen, I'm not an expert on everything. But what the Army did teach me is when you're not an expert, you go seek out an expert. So when COVID hit, my father-in-law, who's an ER physician, guess who I talked to about COVID? And when I'm your representative in Washington, D.C., I'm going to go to the most knowledgeable person I know on water, and that's Gail Griffin. So I'm going to be living just shortly down the road from Gail, and all the time I'm going to say, Gail, what can we do to protect the water? And we're going to fight. And we're not going to let the federal government get a hold of it because the Democrats have no interest in your farms. They have no interest in your community. They want to run your wells dry. They want to drive up the price of gas. This is all a plan, folks. If they control the water, if they control the waterways, they control everything. And we also have to work with our neighbors in the tribes. This is America, and we are a very generous nation. But at the same time, we have to look out for our people. So if you're going to vote in this country, if you're going to be a neighbor in this country, then let's come to the table with clean hands. And we'll fight for your water. I promise you that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wait. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Freed.
Thank you. Water is Arizona's most precious resource, and there's simply too little of it to go around. The litigation that's taking place now between I had the pleasure of speaking with Neil with the Gila River irrigation, and so he shared with me what happens when he communicates with the tribes and the tension that's there and the litigation that's been taking place for decades with attorneys that are getting rich off of these exchanges. When I'm someone who, in my area, I founded a group called the Southeast Regional Council. We get citizens together in a room and connect them with elected officials and others to really work on those hotspot issues of concern and get results. So the idea of getting the right folks in the room and leaving the lawyers out of the picture, if that's possible, is something that it's not that I aspire to do, but it's something that I've been doing for the past 20 years. And so if we can make that happen, none of us here on the stage can make this problem go away with the snap of a finger. But I certainly am familiar with the issue because I'm speaking with the professionals and the experts that are being affected by it here in this region. And I certainly know I'm excited and looking forward to working shoulder to shoulder with citizens here on this particular issue. As a small business owner, I can understand the tension in the ag community of being limited to 6 acre feet of water. As a small business owner, I can certainly understand the uncertainty over what's the price of diesel fuel to run that equipment, what's the cost of fertilizer, what's the cost of what you spray to be able to keep the weeds away, what's the cost of repair, what's the cost of labor. These are all unknowns in a quickly escalating inflationary period. So I look forward to serving you, working shoulder to shoulder with you on these very important issues. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Swin.
So I'd like to quote one of my favorite Congressman, Paul Gosar. Whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting. And in this district, you've been fighting over water for almost, I think it's 70 or 80 years. It's been a long time. And with no resolution, who suffers are the people in the district. So it sounds to me like you've had solutions, but for whatever reason, there was no meeting of the minds. When I worked at the Attorney General's office, we had problems that had gone on for years and years, but we did bring all the people into the room, and we did start to have solutions. Water is a critical issue for us right now. We have less than 8 years left on our CAP agreement, and I've been saying that since the beginning of this campaign. We've had a critical drought for many, many years. So if we don't take care of the water issue, we're going to have problems that go beyond just the water because of the amount of agriculture in our district and all the food that we provide for the rest of the country. So we have to take care of this right now. One of the things that we need to do is to fight and look for other creative solutions. So one of the things that's working in Israel is desalinization. I believe Governor Ducey had proposed something like that. But also bringing in water from other sources and fighting for our rights for the Central Arizona Project water. And we need to push back against California. California always seems to cheat us out of things that are ours and rightfully ours. One of the most important issues in the state is our food supply. And if we don't take care of our farmers and those that are agriculturists and cattle growers and everybody, we are not doing our job. So I do promise to fight and push back and find creative solutions. One thing that I can tell you is, oh, I don't have enough time. I will come back to that in another question. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next question is a 1-minute question, and it is on military readiness. The question is our military ready for a serious conflict with our increasingly militant enemies in China, Russia, and North Korea? And are you ready? Okay. Our first respondent will be Mr. Mayberry. 1 minute, please.
Yes. Thank you for that question. I, as a retired military member, am really quite concerned about our military readiness. One of my close associates who works at Fort Huachuca pointed out to me that amongst the young recruits, that they had the opportunity when they were feeling stressed out to hold up a stress card. Now, after 28 years in the military and certainly in the boot camp, the early training, that is just not the thing we do. All right? Secondly, I've just read an article by 3 retired, 2 generals and 1 colonel, retired West Point graduates, that are very concerned about the things that are going on at West Point. Things such as CRT, things such as political correctness, wokeness, and those types of things. When these generals, one of them is Lieutenant General McInerney of the U.S. Air Force, who graduated from West Point back in the day, are brought up, that is a concern that we really need to be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin?
We have to make sure that America is always leading in national defense and in the defense industry. Quick story, when I was at Fort Huachuca, I was working in a command group there, and the last mandatory training I attended was transgender sensitivity training. We were out there, and the battalion commander, the company commander, and the first sergeant told us that if a man wanted to be a woman and vice versa, they could. But if a man wanted to be a woman, he got to compete on the PT scale with the women, which was at a lower rate of exercise than the men. And then they got to promote quicker through that. And then when it came to taking a urinalysis, if a biological male felt uncomfortable with another male observing them, they got to request either the company commander, first sergeant, or someone else would observe them. So we have a lot of issues right now that are plaguing our military, and morale is hurting because of it. But we also have to look to our Navy. We need to make sure that our 350-ship Navy is meeting the requirements that it needs to. We have to lead on America's oceans. We have to be able to extend our power to the world.
Thank you. Ms. Free?
Here in Congressional District 6, we have 2 military bases. We have Fort Huachuca and we have Davis-Monthan. And we certainly need to make sure that we protect the missions of those 2 bases. More broadly, we live in a global world. And so it's very important for us to make sure that our military is ready with the highest tech equipment and our soldiers that are adequately changed, and that means making a priority, a line item priority when it comes to budgeting. You know, many of us got a wake-up call, some people got a wake-up call when they saw how quickly things escalated in the Ukraine. Many of my friends were thinking that we were living in a post-war world. No, my friends, we need to be ready. We need to be ready to move quickly if there's something that happens where our nation needs to be protected. And I certainly support funding in those areas, and believe that as the best country that on the planet, we can also have the most ready military with appropriate funding.
Thank you. Mrs. Wynn.
This administration has systematically been reducing our military forces by almost 30% since they've taken over. This is a planned attack by our own government to reduce our military. We are in a very precarious position. What happened in Afghanistan was evil, that we killed our own soldiers, that we left $85 billion worth of equipment behind. That's not what Americans do, and we don't leave Americans behind. But that's what this government is doing. We need to wake up and understand. We don't even talk about China in the news. We are focused on Russia and Ukraine. North Korea, we don't talk about the people that can really critically hurt us. Marines were forced out of the military, less than honorably discharged because they wouldn't get vaccinated. Those are the kind of people you want in the military because they're independent thinkers. We don't need sheep in our military, and we don't need people that don't have the moral character to defend this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Siscomani, 1 minute.
We have the best and the bravest military in the entire world, and they need our help, they need our support. We need to be sure that they have all the proper resources to go do their job. And this president and this administration and this leadership in Congress, if you want to call it that, with Nancy Pelosi doing a disaster, has not been serving our military well and our men and women. I highly honor and respect everybody that has served, all the men and women, and I am committed to supporting every single one of them while they serve and after they serve as well. This is highly important for our country. This is one of the functions of the federal government. The federal government needs to remember what their roles are, and this is one of their core roles in the federal government, to support defense and support our military. And they've forgotten that. They've been getting involved in other things that are local and state issues at the county and city level. This is one of them that they have to absolutely focus on. And about China, they're not our friend. And I'll be talking more about that in the next segment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready? Our next question will be about the border. The Constitution makes it clear as a responsibility of the federal government is to protect and control the border, to protect citizens against invasion. How would you grade our current president on this, upholding this provision of the law of the land, and what would you do differently? Mr. Martin?
First off, it is in the Constitution. It is charged to Congress to repel an invasion. If you look at the enumerated powers, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution is very clear. So the Congress has to step up and do its job. But they've been abdicating power for so long, and I don't even know if half of the people there have actually read the U.S. Constitution. So we have to return to a constitutional republic. But furthermore, we have to put a 10-year moratorium on all immigration to the United States. We should put an infantry battalion at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and we should put military outposts along the border and have constant patrols along the Roosevelt easement. So for those of you that might say you're a constitutionalist out there, if you know what the Roosevelt easement is, it is not U.S. territory. So we could have military members driving up and down the Roosevelt easement. We could have them doing patrols. We could finish building the wall instead of letting all that metal rust in the middle of the desert. We have to protect our border. Living just north of the border in Sierra Vista, we see it every single day. We have multiple cases of smuggling. Our Sheriff Mark Daniels and other law enforcement agencies have initiated Operation Safe Streets because the drug cartels are hiring teenagers, American teenagers, to come far away as Phoenix to smuggle people across our border. Now, I am the most qualified candidate up here to fight this war because I was in Afghanistan fighting a border war and searching for Osama bin Laden. My enemies were funded by the drug trade. Does that sound familiar to any of you? We have to classify the Mexican drug cartels as terrorist organizations. We have to protect our citizens. We will finish the wall and protect every single one of you. A quick story. There was a lady who was traveling to meet her son on her birthday for breakfast in Mustang Corners, and just inside of Cochise County. And they did this every year. Well, she was running late that morning, so her son went ahead. He was waiting for her. And as she was going through the intersection there, a car cut through at 116 miles an hour with a young man from Mesa driving, cut her car in half, killing her. The next day, she was set to retire from her job. We've had other horrible incidents because of this. We have to secure the border.
Mrs. Free, go ahead.
Our border is in crisis. It's a crisis of national security. It's a crisis of public safety. And as we all saw in Texas at their border, it's also a humanitarian crisis when 53 poor souls suffocated in the back of a semi-truck. You know, the Biden administration refuses to acknowledge the fact that the border is in crisis. We all know you can't change what you don't acknowledge. I had the honor of walking the border with Sheriff Daniels and his team. You know, I saw the lookout points. I was told about the high-speed traces that take place in Sierra Vista. The amount of fentanyl and cocaine that is coming over the border. I saw the videos of young men walking in single file wearing camouflage and having backpacks on. What's in those backpacks? Nothing good, you guys, nothing good. And we have a right as a sovereign nation to protect our border. I don't know if anybody has traveled internationally, but you can't go to many other countries that don't have a border policy. I don't know where this idea came that we're being mean or insensitive if we have a border policy. It's important for us to have one. And I am not an anti-immigration candidate. I believe that a healthy immigration system is very important for our country, and as you guys know, it always has been. But what we have at our border is chaos. It's not a healthy immigration system. And so we need to have the amount of time that it takes for people to be heard. We need to have people be able to be vetted, and when they come across the border, to know who they are. The guys that are walking across in single file aren't coming over here to grab a hold of the American dream and to add to the beautiful nature of our country. They have nefarious intentions, and they need to be stopped. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Wayne?
I've been working on border issues for the last 10 years. I fight sex and human trafficking, and 2 years ago I commissioned a report to identify criminal activities that were happening in our state. We identified 155 criminal enterprises operating in Arizona right now. Now, since Biden has taken over, we've had a 3,000% increase in sexual predators coming in our country. We are not prosecuting crimes, and we've had a 25% decrease in prosecutions, 75% increase in crime. This is a terrorist attack, and what this president is doing is treasonous, and he needs to be held to account. I don't know if we'll have enough votes, but we certainly need to send a lot of Republican congresspeople to the White House to stop the activities of this president. The fentanyl, the human beings, everything that's coming in. The Border Patrol, I was in DC 3 weeks ago, the Border Patrol that is trying to help us, that is in charge of our region, has a 5-year plan, completely shut down the border, identify who's in the country, send back people that are criminals, because we don't even know who's in our country right now. I fear for another 9/11. And it's time that we take control. They presented this plan to the Biden administration, and the Biden administration told them, it's a great plan, we're not going to do it. They don't want to shut down our border. They want to weaken us. They want to bring in these cells. The Chinese are funding the Mexican and Central American cartels. We know this. Money is going back to China. China is sending the fentanyl and the key ingredient here. They are trying to kill off our young people. They are trying to destroy our country. We have to fight back, and we have to understand how the crime is happening, and I think I'm best prepared to go back to DC to fight these crimes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Sismani, go ahead.
Sure, you asked to grade Joe Biden. I mean, what's lower than an F, right? Because that's exactly what we need to give him for the mess that is at the border. It's a border crisis, and he has created that border crisis. Now, the Border Patrol Association came out with an endorsement for this race, and they chose me as the best candidate to represent CD6 in Congress. Also, the Arizona Police Association endorsed as well. These are key endorsements that we've received because of our stance on the border and our plan. And our plan has to be an all-of-the-above approach in terms of border security. That is a #1 issue in my campaign, and we have to absolutely finish the wall. We have to add the proper resources, add more agents. We have to have the right technology and the right policies that all encompass a right and strong border security plan. Now, my background is my family came from Mexico. My family went through the immigration process, became U.S. citizens. So I have a personal story and journey of immigration into this country. And I can tell you that the process is long, and it's bureaucratic, and it's expensive. Now, it's worth it, and no question about it, and no prouder day in our lives besides the birth of my 6 kids than becoming a U.S. citizen. And I can tell you that my dad, to this day, shows up at the polls on election day dressed up like this. Because it means something to him. He had to fight for it. And I've spent my career working on trade and commerce issue through our ports of entry, legal trade and commerce that our state thrives on by the job creation of that. So when we look at the border, we have immigration that I have a personal journey with. We have trade and commerce and tourism that I've spent my career working on. And we have border security that is my #1 top issue. And according to the Border Patrol Association, I am the best candidate for this job. So I have a very unique and good and strong perspective in all aspects of the border, starting with border security, because during President Trump's leadership, the border was at its most secure point, and trade was also at its highest point, because one depends on the other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more. Are you ready?
No,
2 minutes.
You pointed out that it's a constitutional responsibility of the federal government to secure the border and not allow the invasion that we're having at this point. To grade the Biden administration, it is an absolute dereliction of duty, in my opinion, of what is going on at the border. They are absolutely doing nothing. Again, you think back, 2 years ago, the border was relatively in control. We went down and visited with the mayor of Douglas, and he told us day after January 20th, people were running in the streets of Douglas. This administration has just been absolutely derelict in their duties, and as such, as I and others go to Congress, we only need 5 to turn the House of Representatives Republican. We need to begin impeachment proceedings to get rid of the person who simply will not do his duty. All right? That said then, on a more longer-term basis, I have put together a border security plan. And that is, I've been down on the border, visited it, has a great wall, but the gates are wide open. I mean, anybody can go through those gates. I mean, at least use the wall that has been set up, and then complete the wall as necessary. Secondly, this is a little bit more long-term. I think we need to set up, using our embassy systems, and I have experience with this as a security assistance officer in Latin America, to establish what I call a humanitarian assistance program to help Mexico and Latin American countries develop their own industry in agriculture so they're not pushing on the wall. As good as the wall is, if you don't have things going on the other side, there's always going to be pressure. And then probably the most important thing I can say today is that I believe we need to destroy the Mexican cartels. I was involved in the destruction of the Colombian cartels, and we need to follow the same thing. To find more about that, go to my website. I have the plan on my website. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Chatting about time. Okay. All right. The next question is about foreign affairs, and 1 minute each. And this will be about the Afghanistan disaster. What, in your opinion, is the greatest negative consequence of President Biden's decision to abandon our friends and our military equipment and even U.S. citizens in Afghanistan last August? Start with Mrs. Free. 1 minute.
Okay. This is yet another example of Biden's ineptitude, and it's an embarrassment. Remember, the announcement of the withdrawal came weeks before it actually happened, tipping off the Taliban so that they could plan to overthrow the government. I think it fell in a matter of hours. I don't think a government had fallen that quickly before. Remember the folks that were literally hanging from planes? Didn't that bring back images of some of us who are old enough that saw that during the Vietnam War when the last plane went out? And then we also had folks that we left behind there. It's just a shameful episode. The Senate had a Foreign Affairs Committee that did a study on what happened and found that Biden failed to effectively plan and coordinate and execute an orderly withdrawal of the evacuation. And that summarizes my feelings perfectly. It's an embarrassment for our country, and it weakens us.
Thank you. Mrs. Wynn.
There were many negative consequences out of this action, and I kind of combined two questions. So let me just tell you that the equipment that we left behind is probably being reverse engineered. So we've now given our equipment to our enemies. We don't sell it to them. We don't let China have our equipment, but now they have access to it, or the terrorists have access to it. So I think that was one of the things that really happened here. The fact that we left a perfectly good Air Force base and went to a public airport and lost the lives of those 13 soldiers. But I think the most important thing that happened there was that we showed the world we didn't know what we were doing. We were weak. We were not organized, and our military that we're so proud of was let down. And we let all the criminals that we had spent 20 years capturing and putting in prisons out, and then they were in charge. And that hurt all the soldiers that gave their lives to put those prisoners in jail. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Siscomani.
The greatest negative consequence of what happened in Afghanistan was, without a doubt, the loss of life. The loss of all the lives that our soldiers endured, obviously, and it starts with them, and that is the most tragic part for our country. But many others followed in being murdered for the lack of leadership and vision of Joe Biden and the lack of accountability, because right now they control the White House, they control the Senate, and they control the House of Representatives, including this seat. And that lack of checks and balances and accountability in the president is a big, big problem. And this is another display of that, of their very quick and weak leadership. It sends the wrong message to the world, and we've seen what's happened around the world since this incident. The monetary investments that we had in equipment and in training has been lost, but nothing greater than those lives that were lost, and then all the tragedy that has followed after that.
Thank you. Mr. Mayberry.
The incredible weakness that was shown by what happened in Afghanistan has brought on what I believe, and many experts believe, is the invasion of Ukraine by Putin, because it showed that we are incapable of doing anything. All right? There's concerns that China might do the same with Taiwan. Now, I have a very personal experience or feeling about this thing as a military member who is a planner. You don't take out the equipment first and leave your people behind. That is just unbelievable. And I'm not talking about the $84 billion that was left behind. I'm talking about other stuff. But I was in Turkey when September 11th happened in 2001. I was supposed to come home on the 16th, couldn't come because planes were grounded. I didn't leave until the 22nd of September. But I can tell you this, it never even entered my mind that I would be left behind by my country. Yet, we see what happened in Afghanistan. To me, another element of dereliction of duty. That man does not deserve to be in office.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin.
I served in Afghanistan in OEF 4, Operation Enduring Freedom 4, in 2005, 2006. I slept in a tent every day for 13 months and fought against the Taliban. I have personal experience here. I know many people. We worked with many people over there. And I can tell you that after months of setting up provincial governments and training people in how to defend themselves, watching Joe Biden and the Democrats turn over that country to the Taliban was heart-wrenching. I know a lot of good men who died over there fighting for that, a lot of good men and women. But the thing is we'll never recover that loss. And it was all done so the Biden administration could have a photo op on September 11th, 20 years later. It was the wrong war to be in the first place. I don't believe we're the world's police. But when we send American troops over there, when we spill American blood, there better be a good reason for it. And now, Joe Biden has allowed at least 50 people on the terrorist watch list to try to cross our border, our southern border. He is encouraging this and should be impeached day one.
Is that it? Okay, we're going to move on now and go to, since the day Biden took office, he has conducted a war on energy. The results, as we have seen, have been disastrous. Everything from gas prices to farmers and laminating the spiral cost of fertilizer and what might turn into engineered famine in the near future. What do you think we should do differently? And that would be Mrs. Nguyen.
Everything that the Biden administration is doing right now is a war on the American people. In this district especially, we have, when I look at the farmers, I look at the agriculture, I look at the families that have been here generation after generation, and there's just an all-out assault on our way of life. And my son-in-law is in agriculture as he sells fertilizers to farmers, and just the cost of getting the goods exponentially has gone up so much. You're almost putting everybody out of business, and someone is saying this is an organized famine. When I think that they can't do anything more outrageous and hurtful to the American people, they do. So we have to fight back against their energy policies. We have to fight back against what they're doing, and we have to protect our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Siscomani?
The Biden administration policies have stopped us from any common sense solutions around energy. And they have not been able to stop, nor actually they have grown our dependence on foreign oil when we have the resources here in our country to be able to tackle this issue. They canceled the Keystone Pipeline XL project on day one. This immediately had an effect on the supply chain of this country and on gas prices immediately. They continue to fail at this like they fail at everything else that they touch. We need to go back to our own reliance of energy here in our homeland, and we have the capability to do that. We don't need to be depending on Russian oil or anyone else for our energy needs. We have it all here at home, and this is where we need to focus it. Now, this is not something that was a problem 2 years ago. It became a problem with Biden, like everything else that we're facing today.
Thank you.
Mr. Maybear, 1 minute.
Yes, we need to increase the supply of oil so that we can get again the economy going again. Again, 2 years ago we were energy independent. We need to get that going again. Now, what we have here is the Biden administration is all caught up in this green energy and that type of thing. It's not to the level that it's usable yet. Now I've spoken with the experts in the electrical industry, and they point out that gas and coal are the best things to provide electric energy for us. Wind and solar. Wind only gives us 40% plant capacity. Solar gives us 20%. Those kinds of things are nice if we could get them developed, but they're not developed yet. We need to use the sources that we already have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin?
First off, I would like to thank President Trump for putting 3 great Supreme Court justices on the bench and are limiting the powers of an overreaching federal government when it comes to the American people. But more than that, I just read this morning that Joe Biden tapped into our oil reserves and sent our reserves to China.
Right.
To China, our enemy. Right now, for every person that has to, for the pain at the pump, for the farmer who has to worry about how they're going to run their equipment, for the semi-driver who wonders how much are they going to have to keep increasing the price just to keep their trucks running. We have Joe Biden in the White House and the progressive Democrats sending our oil to China. We have to take back this country. And it's not just Joe Biden. We have to take it back from the establishment. The people who would like to see us driving green cars, the billionaires of California and elsewhere. It's time that the people take control of this country and our own energy future.
Thank you. Mrs. Stree, go ahead.
We need to open back up the pipeline, become energy independent. We need to have the ability to drill our own oil. Now, I know that's not a simple thing to just turn the switch and do. Biden has slowed down the approval of leases. Refineries are not operating at full capacity. So there are some problems that are involved with that. But we certainly need to get on the pathway of being able to be energy independent. I'm very concerned when a government backs a particular type of industry like they're doing with electric. So let's just say magically all of a sudden we all decide we're going to go out and we're going to get electric vehicles. Well, guess what would happen? The grid can't even support it. We already have rolling blackouts just with air conditioning in the summertime. So it's just ridiculous, it's not planned well, and it's just another failing of the Biden administration.
Thank you.
All right, this will be your last question before you'll have an opportunity to give your stump speech. So, and this is a question, just kind of a happy question. So a person's hero can tell us a lot about that person's character. Do you have any heroes? If so, who and why? And we will start with Mr. Siscomani.
Sure, thank you. My number one hero is my father, my dad. I will talk about him in my closing remarks, so I'll focus on my number 2, and that is my pastor. My pastor, his name was Arnoldo Gutierrez. He has passed in 2017 on Thanksgiving weekend. I miss him every day. But his calling was to reach that first generation of Hispanics in Tucson with 2 messages, the message of faith and love and the message of patriotism. If you walked in this office, you saw a picture of Jesus and Ronald Reagan right next to each other. He was a veteran, a 21-year veteran in the Air Force, and he taught me what my parents raised me, conservative, of course, with those values, but he taught me the way of where we belong politically, how to think through things, and also, of course, a spiritual guide for my family and me. So my pastor, Arnoldo Gutierrez, a veteran, a man of God, and someone that taught patriotism and the conservative values to dozens and dozens and dozens of first-generation immigrants in Pima County. That's my hero.
Thank you. Mr. Mayberry.
Yes, my hero is George Washington. I admire that man, having led the Continental Army, defeated the most powerful nation in the world, Britain, in those days, and then after doing that, went home and farmed. And then he was called up to be the president of the Constitutional Convention and led the process of developing our Constitution as we know it today. He served only 2 terms, 4 years each, and then he stepped aside. That is the man that could have been king, but didn't. Because he developed, he understood the concept of a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I respect him, and in a way I feel like I have sort of followed in his path, in the sense that when I retired from the Air Force, I went home and farmed. Now I've come out of retirement to try to do something to help this country.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Well, as a Christian, I don't really idolize men, but I have to say that situations breed heroes. Situations grow a culture of heroes. And when the times get tough, that's when principle matters. It's easy to be principled when things are easy and when things are good. But when the times are tough, what are you going to do? Are you going to stick by your principles? So in those situations like we face ourselves today, my heroes are all of you that are here for attending, to listening to candidates, informing yourself on who the best person to vote for, and all those people who are going to watch this online. Because we have to take back this country. We have to save the last great beacon of hope for freedom and liberty in the world. And that doesn't happen without a great movement. That doesn't happen without you, your friends, your family, your neighbors. It's time to carry the torch for the next generation. And I thank every one of you, and I'm going to be standing right beside you when we do it together. Let's take back the House.
Thank you. Mrs. Bree.
Without a doubt, my hero is my dad. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2012. 1 minute he was making a joke that I know the nurse had heard probably at least 100 times. And then when she went back in to give him his breakfast, he had passed away. But my dad was so instrumental. He was a Republican. I grew up in rural Ohio, and he was a Republican in an area that at that time was Democrat. My mom was a Democrat. And so I saw my dad, though, move every day and hold strong to his beliefs, even though he was in the minority in our community. And he and I sat together, and he would talk to me about the dangers of a government drunk with power. And I saw him every day put his family first. And I saw how his faith was infused in everything that he did. So I'm sorry that he can't see me here today. Maybe he does see me. I hope he does. But it's definitely my father. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Wynn.
I was going to say the founding fathers, but one of the founding fathers, James Wilson, was my husband's great-great-grandfather. And so I want to say that tonight my hero is my husband. When Ann Kirkpatrick announced she wasn't going to run, I turned to him and I said, you have 3 months to talk me out of running. And he encouraged me every day, and he's been with us. We have raised 7 children together. The last one just got married July 2nd. 7 college graduated kids. He married a woman with 4 children. No sane person does that. But he ran a program for this country of the Apache attack helicopters, brought 5,000 jobs to this state, and protected the warfighter. And this is a man of moral courage. This is someone who stands by my side and has been there through thick and thin. And I am just humbled to be his wife, and we are doing this together. And I'm grateful that he came from the founding fathers of this country. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have been so happy to hear all of your opinions tonight, and we feel like we've been educated and uplifted and reminded of what's important, and we really appreciate all of you tonight. Thank you very much. We are now going to go to the 3-minute speech where you get to convince us to vote for you. And so we will start, we've been going in order, and we will start with Mr. Mayberry, and you will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, I believe in the future of agriculture with the faith born not of words but of deeds. Now, many of you here in this room will probably recognize that as the first line of the FFA Creed, right? I have lived that life of that creed, and I know what it feels like to the satisfaction one has from the accomplishments of the agricultural life. I will tell you also that I believe in the future of America, not because of words, but of deeds. I served 28 years in the United States Air Force, standing in the gap against socialism and communism. I have learned from that experience, and I have served with integrity as expected from a military officer. And I intend to be able to use that experience and take it to Washington and the integrity expected of a military officer to represent us, to represent you in Washington. I believe in the inspired origin of the U.S. Constitution. I will bring to this seat in Congress a profound love for this country and for the constitutional government that has provided us individual freedom and the position of power that we find ourselves in the world today. There is no other country like the United States of America. Would you agree? Yes. I've seen that with my own eyes. I firmly believe in the unalienable rights articulated in the Declaration of Independence of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To that end, I believe in personal property ownership, secure borders, a strong national defense, limited government, and the right to keep and bear arms to protect those rights and others. I stand for faith, family, and freedom. Indeed, I want to awaken core American values. Now, I am one of us. I was born in this district. I was educated at the University of Arizona. I served at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, and when I retired, I returned home to this district, where I taught agricultural sciences, coached baseball and basketball, and farmed. I am one of us. I understand this area. I understand the people. I understand the issues. So when it comes to representative government, why not send one of us who already has national and international experience to Washington, D.C. to represent us? I encourage your vote because I represent you and I represent the values that are deeply entrenched in this district. Support for me is a support for you. So vote Young Mayberry on August 2nd or on the early ballots, which, by the way, I noticed mine showed up in the mail today. All right? Thank you. Go to Young Mayberry for ushouse.com to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Hello, I'm Brandon Martin. I was the 2020 GOP nominee in Congressional District 2. This area was not a part of that district, but I can say now that I'm glad it is, because we lost a bunch of crazy liberals in the middle of Tucson and picked up a bunch of great conservatives. So that I'm very thankful for. And I was endorsed by President Trump on 3 separate occasions. I was endorsed by the National Right to Life. I was endorsed by the Arizona Free Enterprise Club and many other great organizations, to include HuckPack and others. But the endorsements that I'm most proud of were the 170,000 plus votes that we got in the general election. I cherish every single one of them, and I look forward to adding every single one of you that's not related to one of these people to that voting total. So when you go vote, when you ask your friends and family to vote, vote Brandon Martin. We are the right candidate. We are the most qualified candidate. Whether it's the border issue and fighting against the Mexican drug cartels, whether it's going and questioning the corruption in Washington, D.C., who would you rather have than an interrogator on your side? Now, I find myself a more freedom, liberty-leaning Republican, and in the mold of Barry Goldwater, I don't believe that we should be going there to strengthen a federal government. We should be looking at what programs we can cut, because right now we feel the squeeze. We started off this by saying, let's choke the money that's coming out of Washington, D.C. They're spending our futures away. We can do this together. And it's not simply, is a law needed, but first, is it constitutionally permissible? We have to return to a constitutional representative republic. That's what we were founded on. We're not a democracy. We are a republic, and we have to take that fight back. Now, we can do this together, and I guarantee you, everyone watching is going to do this. So if you want a Brandon Martin yard sign, we've got some Martin yard signs out there. Get with Bob, the very handsome white-haired gentleman, and he'll get you a yard sign. Grab a t-shirt. I tell you, it's a movement, and movements are exciting. People want to be a part of them. But this isn't going to happen easy. The Dems aren't going to give up control easy. We see that they're pushing gun control. They're pushing transgender. Whatever it is, they're trying to destroy the fabric of American society. And I'll leave you with this. I believe I'm the only candidate in the history of running for Congress that has been endorsed by 2 consecutive presidents, 1 Republican and 1 Democrat. President Trump endorsed me on 3 separate occasions, and last December, Joe Biden said, "Let's go, Brandon, I agree." We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. It's okay, don't be shy.
Thank you.
BrandonForArizona.com, FOR, BrandonForArizona.com. God bless every one of you.
Thank you. Ms. Free.
So I'm Lucretia Free, free as in freedom. You know, I grew up in rural Ohio. We called it the Boonies. It was an area that was surrounded by cornfields. Stover's Farm was just over the rise, and there was a creek that ran through the back of my house. And I'm embarrassed to say I was well into adulthood before I knew that people actually ate those crawdads that we kept as pets in jars. But you guys know the kind of place, right? They say it's far from the city center. It's in the middle of nowhere, lots of unincorporated area, a split community. Some people want growth, some people just want to be left alone. Anybody in this room know what I'm talking about? But that's the kind of place that I grew up in. And it was my dad and my two sisters. My mom was a Democrat and my dad was a Republican, and there were very animated conversations that we had. Many Thanksgiving dinners were ruined, but we made it through as a family. You know, we live in the greatest country on the planet, and yet it's barely recognizable right now. We have high inflation, we have high gas and food, the high price of food and fuel. We have our cities are rampant with crime. We have a Supreme Court justice that recently was a victim of a murder attempt. And we had Democrat legislators who refused to vote for additional security for our Supreme Court justices. We have a border that's in crisis and a president that refuses to acknowledge that that border is in crisis. No, things are not normal at all. What I find Arizonans are looking for when I speak with them is they're looking for a fresh voice. All the politicians that are elected to office, all the best thinking that they had is what led us to this moment that we have right now. So a different perspective is needed, a fresh perspective. You know, when you run for office, it's not a power grab for me. This is your seat. This is a role where you're of service to your community. It's a servant's role. And so one of the things that I feel very strongly about is to make sure that everyone understands that my process of moving through the world and working in this role would be very collaborative and communicative with you, because I need to know what you think. I need to come out here and visit. I understand how people only come out when they're running for office and then you never see them again. I'm someone who has been working in this way for years in my own community. So mine is a movement. It's a movement of the people. It's a movement that says, yes, I am humbly asking you to join this movement. It's a movement that says yes to a fresh voice for Southern Arizona. It's a movement that says yes to someone who has served their community for over 20 years and made a difference. And say yes to someone who has the skills and experience to hit the ground running. Again, my name is Lucretia Free. Please check out my website, free4congress.com. Live free, vote free. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Wynn.
This is not the country you or I grew up in. I want to go back to Congress because I have a lifelong record of solving problems. In my 20s, when I had just graduated from the University of Arizona, I got into real estate and lending. And one of the first things we did is we founded a homeless shelter for women and children that has taken hundreds of women and children off the streets of Tucson, rehabilitated them so that they didn't have to be homeless. I was then very successful in my career for almost 30 years in lending and real estate, but then we had a mortgage crisis, and I went to work at the Arizona Attorney General's office. Do you know where the most fraud was in the entire country? Tucson, Arizona, Raul Grijalva's district. We don't need a lot more evidence that the Democrat policies don't work, but I helped save over 440 homes. I helped set up 22 veterans courts to get veterans connected to the services that they were entitled to so that their recidivism rate went under 1%. I helped set up a task force against senior abuse because we as seniors are the greatest target because we have the greatest wealth and people try to steal it. But my heart went to crimes against children. And so for the last 8 years, I have been finding missing children, bringing technology and resources to law enforcement, and fighting crime at the border, successfully doing that. I also have the endorsement of law enforcement and the county sheriffs in this state. I have the endorsement of Paul Gosar, the Right Women, which are the women, the wives of the Freedom Caucus. I tell you that because I am a conservative voice. I'm not trying to figure out who I am as a politician. I'm not really a politician. I'm someone who's been a business person who wants to go represent you and give this seat back to the people. This is your seat. And you need someone you can count on and rely on who has an established record who can get the job done. And I believe that that is me. My husband and I have raised 7 kids, all college educated, like I told you, and now all married. I did my mom mic drop July 2nd. And we have 16 grandchildren, 12 of which are 6 and under. It is their future I'm fighting for, but it'll be all of your children and grandchildren also. We need to take back this country. We need to vote. We need to impeach Biden, but we need to probably put him in a jail cell someplace. What they've done is try to steal our country. And if you don't know how to take it back, the only way there is to beat the Democrat. And I'm the only one that's run in a race and beat a Democrat with 67% of the vote. This isn't about who you like the best. This is about who can win and beat the Democrat and get the job done. Arizona needs a win. Winforcongress.com. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Siscomani.
You know, we're living in a time where we have to aggressively fight for the values that had made the American dream possible for so many of us. But what we're seeing right now out of Washington are just policies that are hurting our state, are hurting our nation, are hurting our families. And they're doing so without any accountability, like I said, because they control the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. But we're so very close to flipping this seat, the Congress, by flipping 5 seats in the entire country. And when that happens, we'll take back the majority. And on day 1, we will make Nancy Pelosi a former Speaker of the House and get her fired right on day 1. Now, I grew up in this district. As I mentioned, I'm a dad of 6. And, you know, it's interesting when you go out to restaurants and they see you with 6 kids and people ask you, are these all your kids? As if you were borrowed kids to go out and eat, especially in this economy. I tell them they're all my kids and I'm happy to claim them, especially around April 15th. It's a great time to remember to claim your kids. But this is the reason why I jumped in. This is the reason why I'm running, because we have a border crisis. We have a terrible situation with inflation where it's in a 40-year high. I can go down the list of things. We talked about Afghanistan, we talked about China, we talked about energy, all these areas, whatever Biden touches, he starts failing at. He's failing, and they're failing fast. And I quite frankly don't know that the same American dream that was there for me will be there for my kids and for your kids. Laura, my wife, who's here with me, 5 of the 6 kids are here with us as well. Props to them for staying quiet. If you didn't notice kids, that's all mom's doing right there. So congratulations to Laura. But this is why we're fighting. We're fighting because I want them to have a future. We're fighting because I want your kids to have a future as well. See, my parents came from Mexico, as I explained. And they're not a rags to riches financial story. My dad has been a bus driver since I can remember. He's still a bus driver for the city of Tucson. And he's a patriotic man, like I told you. If you walk into my parents' home today, you're going to think you're walking into a 4th of July parade because they have flags everywhere. God bless America. They are proud Americans. They value this country. They value the opportunities that we've been given because it's not about wealth. It's about opportunity. And nothing stifles the American dream more than a big, out-of-reach government. See, my dad pulled me aside a week before I launched the campaign, my hero, like I said. And he said, Juan, I want you to think of something. This conversation in Spanish, of course. He said, where else could we have our story? We come to this country, we immerse ourselves in the culture, we learn English, we become U.S. citizens. He said, I drive a bus my entire life, and my son has a shot at becoming a member of the United States Congress. My God, where else in the world? The answer is only in America. And that happens because we've put the federal government where they belong, and we've always promoted liberties. Juan Siscomani running for U.S. Congress. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you very much. God bless you.
I just want to take a second and thank each and every one of you for having the courage to run. I know how you feel and what it takes to run. And I also want to thank the individuals that took their time tonight to come and listen to you and learn who you are. It's such an important part of the process, learning to who to vote for, not just on somebody's advice. So I thank each and every one of you for that. And all of you are very, very qualified to do this. So I wish each and every one of you good luck.
Thank you.
If everyone will please stay seated for just a moment, we're going to invite the candidates to exit through the side door, and then you will be, then we'll let you guys go and you can talk to them outside. And there are snacks. So, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Good job. We're done. What did you say?